Welcome to Fishing Without Bait, a lifetime without definitive expectations, where we help people explode into their lives through full impact mindfulness. There's no entrance fee, only the honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness to try. If you're welcome nowhere else, you're certainly welcome here. Welcome, my friends. I'm Jim Ellermeyer. I'm a behavioral health therapist, and today I'm joined, as usual, by my good friend, co-host, and producer of this program, Mr. Mike.
Glad to be here once again with you.
Mike, we've been talking about the general malaise of the world, this general sense of uneasiness and uncertainty that seems to be pervasive throughout not only this society, and I'm speaking of the United States, but generally spreading throughout a lot of the other countries, some sense of hopelessness and foreboding.
Yeah, and you know, obviously it's a lot of reaction from a lot of people got upended in the last year and a half, 2 years with everything, and I mean, I think we talked about it on the show. It's just like everybody is dealing with a you know not a PTSD, but you know a reaction to trauma. You know, the world has undergone trauma in the last 2 years over this big pandemic and all the reactions to it and everything. So I mean, we're all kind of responding to things, and some people, it's hard to respond the right way in mass, right? Or in a positive way in mass.
Yes, the sense of isolation has left many people with a feeling of hopelessness. And what we'd like to talk about today, as most everyone knows out there by now, we like to speak about the difference between religion and spirituality.
Yes.
Religion being a dogma, enforced set of rules and structure, and spirituality, which is a more of a connection, a spiritual experience with what we call in the 12-step world a higher power, Mike. And what we're going to talk about today is prayer, and please don't let that word, I don't know what that word generates in you. When I say the word prayer, Mike, what comes immediately to your mind?
Church and the Bible and Christianity.
Yes, yeah. Yes. And remember, it's the kitchen in which we were cooked in how we perceive things. So in my own...
what I grew up with, right?
Yes, in my own, it's relational framing. It's the framing that we have, how we relate to what we relate to, our past experiences and memories. And mine consist of being raised in the Catholic Church. And when I think of prayer, we think of being on our knees and folding our hands and saying the rote prayers. And please don't think that I'm throwing stones at those rote prayers, because what are those rote prayers but forms of mantra and meditations, where we attempt to get into a deeper type of understanding and connection. And those type of prayers, Mike, the mantras are to disconnect us from the sight, sounds, and images of the material world.
Absolutely.
And for what we're looking for is some type of a healing balm, some type of a connection with something that's greater than ourselves.
Right.
So, Mike, if we truly believe that we're the end all and be all of creation, I think that's a very arrogant type of attitude.
It's a big universe out there, right? I actually just watched. Are you aware of the show What We Do in the Shadows?
I'm aware of it.
You're aware of it. It's like one of those mockumentary Taika Waititi shows, and it's about vampires that live in, I think, Long Island, right? Okay. And somebody explained the universe as a whole to the one. And he's like, I've lived 7.5 centuries thinking that we were a planet when everything rotated around us, that was held up by giant elephants that's riding a giant turtle. You know, like that kind of thing, like that very geocentric kind of idea, right? But when it really it's just like, hey, we're just a little speck here, and it's a big world, and there's more than what's right in front of us, right?
Well, there's so much discord in the world today. I believe that at some point, I don't know when, Mike, we kind of lost the sense that we were all playing on the same team. So if you go along the law of physics, it says that matter cannot be created or destroyed. energy cannot be created or destroyed, then you and I are breathing molecules and atoms that have existed for perhaps billions of years.
Mm-hmm.
We're all connected with all of this, and we go back to what we've talked before about the Sanskrit, the Buddhist mantra of So Hung, So Hum, So Hum, and what it translates into is I am that.
Mm-hmm.
I am that, meaning that both you and I, everyone, the birds, the water, the stones, are made up of the same type of energy. And when we contemplate being connection and oneness with the universe and all the energy, when we contemplate and we meditate on saying, I am that, and we connect with everything, it gets you to the point where, like the Buddhists and the Hindus say, why would I hurt or destroy anything? Because that's part of me. I am that, which is one of our concepts of do no harm.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the reasons why we had that tattoo put on us. As long as we're doing no intentional harm to anyone or anything, then we can certainly do as we choose. So this matter of prayer, and I'll go back to when I was in my second hospital, and I was called down to we'll call it the head shed, to visit the psychiatrist, and I walked in there and I sat down, and the psychiatrist asked me, he says, Mr. Ellermeyer, I understand you pray. And I said, yeah, doc, I think I do. Because I'd been to some 12-step meetings. I had some inkling of it, not a whole lot of idea. It's like learning how to count to 10 in Spanish. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
most everybody knows that without any meaning behind it. And I said, yes. And apparently my roommate had turned me in. He thought I was disturbed for what I was doing, praying. And keep in mind that he was my roommate in a psychiatric hospital, not the Holiday Inn.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yes. And he says, tell me, Jim, what is prayer? And I said, well, I believe it's talking to God, the creator, the divine, whatever. And then he says, oh, you talk to God, do you? And I said, yes, I do. And I kind of know where this conversation was heading. So then he says, does God talk to you? And I said, well, I like to think so. And then he asked me the question. He says, do you hear God talk to you? And I was a little bit upset. So I said, of course I do. Don't you? And he nodded his head. And I saw him right at the bottom of his paper, psychotic. So he dismissed me. And I'm walking back to the room. And I'm thinking, well, Chief, you just breathed your last breath of fresh air. You've punched your ticket to Mayview, which was a hospital outside of Pittsburgh here. Fortunately, somebody burned it down a long time ago. Actually, somebody did burn it down, Mike. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, you know what? I have to talk to someone sane.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting in a psychiatric hospital. And Mike, there wasn't anybody sane in that hospital. Doctors, staff, didn't matter. So I was in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, which is I considered Catholic Central, even though I wasn't a practicing Catholic. I asked one of the staff to call up there because I wanted to talk to a priest. And remember, when we're connection, when we believe that we're present and aware, then the divine, the creator of the universe will put people, places, and things in our lives. Then if we're there to see them, then they'll have some meaning. There was a priest there in 20 minutes, and his name was Father Raphael. And he sat down and he talked to me, and I told him my story. And at the end, he just said a few words to me, Mike. What he said was, he's there, Jim. He's there. God talks to everybody. But what he told me was that very few people listen. Very few people listen. And that's a moment that struck with me for so long because there's so much chatter. There's so much sight, sounds, and images that are put into our heads, Mike, that creation, whatever, could be happening 10 feet away from us and we'd have no idea it was occurring.
This is like what we're talking about taking that moment and observe, right? Because, shut down that chatter and see what's around you. And, I listened to a song by one of my favorite bands that talks about miracles. And it seems to get a little goofy when some of the stuff they mention on there, but it's also just like, listen, everything around you is part of this.
When we talk about manifestation, which all the cool kids are talking about, when we talk about the law of attraction, we're talking about generating this positive energy, this prayer, this connection, this joining in with. I remember years and years ago, my mother called me and said, "Would you pray for so and so who's dying of cancer?" And I said, "Mom, if you want me to, I will. However, I personally don't believe that the creator of the divine is waiting to hear from me before a decision is made on this person."
And I'm kind of in a similar thing, where it's like, I think they have better things to do, than listen to me.
Well, and however, we ended the call. But here's what I did tell her. I said, what I will do is ask that they have the courage to accept whatever happens, whatever the creator of the divine will is. Well, 2 minutes later, I get a call from my brother who said, Mom just called me and asked me how I felt to have a brother who was an atheist. So, however, what we're talking about is this connection. And I know that there's a lot of talk about third eyes. Okay. So the third eye sometimes is viewed in mystic circles as the first eye is the eye of the senses that takes in the data, the sight, the sounds, and the images. The second eye would be going a little further and deeper, and that would be the eye of reason. Okay. And what we're talking about when we get into this prayer realm and open up into what we call the beginner's mind, Mike, which we often talk about, would be the mind of contemplative understanding. To sit back non-judgmentally, contemplatively understand, and try to connect with the universe. That's what we're talking about, the third eye. I've been listening to, although, and I hope nobody's offended out there, I am not a Christian, although I truly believe that the Jesus person said a lot of really wonderful things, and I agree with everything that he said. The Catholic priest, his name's Richard Rohr, and he described prayer as returning the divine gaze. And I just thought that was an absolutely beautiful way to put things. So most people, when they pray, Mike, they usually they're asking for
forgiveness.
Well, usually they're asking for something.
Forgiveness and help a lot of times.
Yes.
So,
or in the 12-step world, we would often call those foxhole prayers. One of my favorite prayers was, most repeated prayers were, please don't let the lights come on behind me. So, however, when you're not participating in those activities, you don't have to make those type of prayers. So, and you're exactly correct, Mike, the prayers of forgiveness, the prayers of particularly gratitude. How much gratitude do you hear on the news every day? How much gratitude do you hear people talking about?
Those are the special interest show stories at the end of the newscast. Usually, they'll try to hold you on, right?
Yes. So generally, when a doctor or a physician, some type of a provider, walks into a room, one of the first things they ask you is, "What's wrong?" How do you think the tenor of or the atmosphere of that meeting would go if the first thing they asked is, "Tell me a few things that are right about you"?
Doesn't it set the tone? Doesn't it just set that negative tone? I mean, so of course you're going to come from that way. So
yes. So quite often I'll knock people off of their square when they first come in and see me, and I'll say, "Well, what's right about being you?" And most people will say, "I've never been asked that question." I've never been asked that question. So when we're talking about the connection, I think most people don't even view their own mortality, Mike. So many people are doing all of these whatever things in the world, these selfish, self-centered things, thinking that there's going to be no end to their life.
Yeah, you don't think about what happens, whether that be, what happens to people around you, or that there is a next step to it, right?
Yes, in the Buddhist world, death defines life, which means that every day is a gift, and yes, someday you're going to die. However, it may not be today, so live your life that's right in front of you. When Jesus was talking to his disciples, his apostles, always telling them, "I'm right here, I'm right in front of you." When he was saying, "I am," who are you? His answer would be, "I am," meaning I'm right here in front of you. I am. And when we talk about gratitude, The Native Americans had a different type of conception. I know that people misinterpret the Christian Bible. They believe that men and women, man was created to control the earth, like they own it. Actually, the word is the creator, the divine, according to that story, gave people as stewards of the earth. That means you're caretakers. Is that correct? So if you're a caretaker of the planet, does that mean that you have a right to destroy everything in it?
No.
So it's a sad thing that in the last century, over 100 million human beings have been killed by each other. And now we're trying to destroy the host. So I think of this Native American prayer that says, it's just an amazingly wonderful prayer that I thought that was just so beautiful. And so their concept was of the Great Spirit, was it not? And they revered the land because no one owned it. They were caretakers of it, which was one of the reasons why the Western world, Peter Stuyvesant, they thought they got one over on the Indians by selling Manhattan for $24 worth of beads. Actually, it's the Indians who thought they were getting over because they had absolutely no conception that land could be bought or sold. None. Zero. They just says, hey, we'll give you $24, we'll give you all these beads and trinkets. They thought it was great because they couldn't give it. They couldn't give them the land anyway because they didn't own it.
They pretty much just got free whatever.
They thought, great,
Yeah.
good, that's wonderful. So one of the Iroquois prayers is just gorgeous. It says, we return thanks to our mother, the earth, which sustains us. We return thanks to the rivers and streams which supply us with waters. We return thanks to all herbs which furnish medicine for the cure of our diseases. We return thanks to the corn and to her sisters, the beans and the squashes, which give us life. We return thanks to the wind, which moving the air has banished diseases. We return thanks to the moon and the stars, which have given us their light when the sun was gone. We return thanks to the sun that he has looked upon the earth with a beneficent eye. Lastly, we return thanks to the Great Spirit in whom is embodied all goodness and who directs all things for the good of his children. So, do Muslims breathe any differently than you, Mike?
Nope.
Do Christians breathe any differently than Muslims?
No.
Or Hindus or Jews?
No.
So, where's the discrepancy at, Mike?
It's the interpretation and the point of view.
Yes. So, all of these religions have as their basic core, do unto others as you would want done unto you. So I'm having a little bit of problem about this thing about who's right and who's wrong. I'm having a little issue with that when we talk about gratitude. And in further podcasts, what I'd like to do is talk about the actual psychological and biological benefits, the physiological changes in the body when we pray and when we meditate, and how it can change our outlook and our perception on life.
And it is, it's important to stress, it doesn't matter from which angle you come from, but whatever puts your mind at ease and lets it open up, whether that be, the ways that you were taught as a Christian or Catholic, or, a Muslim, a Buddhist, a Native American, whatever opens your mind up to be receptive and listen inside what that voice is, whether that's just your inner voice, whether that be God's voice, whatever it is, that's important to find peace.
Well said. Be quiet and pay attention. So if anyone would like to participate in this conversation, please contact us. We would be glad to reach out to you, as we are open to all views.
Absolutely. And please also support us on the Patreon page, patreon.com/fishingwithoutbait. We actually did record before this episode I think we're going to throw it out there if you're okay with it. I happened to hit record early. We had a conversation about the state of mental health and professional wrestling, of all things. So if you want kind of a little different angle, a little wider conversation, please support us over there as low as $1 a month. Helps us keep the lights on here with Fishing Without Bait.
And as a free offering, we offer a free prescription: fruits, nuts, and vegetables, unplug your television and take up fishing. And for a truly mindful experience, we suggest that you fish without bait. Do a kindness for yourself and do a kindness for another. Forgive yourself and forgive another. Till all are free, none are free. Namaste.
Please check out our website at fishingwithoutbait.com, where you can listen to the show, comment on our discussions, and find out where you can subscribe to our podcast.
If you're interested in flying the colors of fishing without bait, click the shop icon on our website. We have clothing, mugs, cell phone cases, and so much more. Show the world that you fish without bait.
This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.